Welcome to my review of the Case Medium Congress knife. First things first, as you know, my channel is not sponsored by any manufacturer, but here comes the shocking news. This knife was given to me by Case for free. Yes, now I am a corrupt reviewer like and the by far most hated. Well, the good people at Case had watched my reviews of their pocket knives and they enjoyed them. And their way of saying thank you was to allow me to pick a knife from their current product line. And immoral and corruptible as I am, I accepted the gift. I would have bought this knife anyway, not so much for practical reasons but more for historical, or you might even say for anecdotal reasons, because the Congress knife pattern became famous through President Abraham Lincoln. We will get to that in the second part of this video. So what do we know about the Congress knife pattern? We do know that this knife pattern was first made in Sheffield, England. But we do not know why it was named Congress. It appeared on the scene sometime in the first third of the 19th century. Back then, Sheffield-based knife manufacturers exported Congress knives to the United States, especially to the southern states, where they seem to have been sold almost exclusively, which makes the Congress knife unusual among traditional American knife patterns in that it used to be a regional knife pattern. Now, what are the characteristics of the Congress knife pattern? What immediately strikes the eye is the handle frame that is curved like a crescent. Another distinguishing feature are the squarish-shaped bolsters at both ends. The usual blade configuration is 2 sheepsfoot blades and 2 pen blades. And that's exactly what we find on this Case Congress knife. Here we've got the master sheepsfoot blade and on the opposite end the master spear blade. Additionally, there are a small spear blade, or I should rather say pen blade, and a small sheepsfoot blade, usually called coping blade. In former times, each blade may have been used for individual tasks, but nowadays a pocket knife with 4 blades is a bit of an anachronism. I guess modern knife users rather prefer a Swiss Army knife over a traditional Congress knife, because a Swiss Army knife offers simply more options with additional tools like a can opener, a cap lifter, a screwdriver, etc. So I consider the Congress knife more a collectible knife pattern. But in the past, 4 blades were not the limit. There were Congress knives with 6 and even 8 blades. Personally, I believe that the manufacturers made these high-end Congress knives to show off their craftsmanship rather than for practical reasons. As in my previous Case knife reviews, let's take a look at the model number. The number 64052 is actually composed of 3 numbers. 052 is Case Cutlery's factory pattern number for the medium-sized Congress knife. The leading 2 numbers simply mean that it is a knife with a bone handle and 4 blades. The suffix SS stands for stainless steel. Case Cutlery's name for this steel is True Sharp Surgical Steel, which is a high carbon steel that offers good corrosion resistance and decent edge holding. The closed length is 3.5 inch. Each blade operates on its own strong back spring, and each blade has got a 90-degree stop. The trick here is to make each blade easily accessible. And as you can see, there are cutouts on both sides of the handle, and all 4 blades have extra long nail nicks. Another challenge is to mount the 4 blades precisely in line with each other so that they don't rub against each other. This knife is extremely well made. There are no marks on the blades and everything is flush, no ridges, no gaps. The handle material is jigged bone, and if you have watched my review on the large Texas toothpick, you already know this color. It's navy blue with shades ranging from a light sky blue to a dark deep sea blue. The blue color and the red shield give it a very patriotic look. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm especially interested in this knife for historical reasons. And these reasons have to do with the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. Shortly after 10 o'clock on the night of April 14th, 1865, President Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theatre while watching the play Our American Cousin. The president was taken across the street to a boarding house where he died at 22 minutes past 7 the next morning. On the night when President Lincoln was assassinated, he was carrying a 6-bladed, ivory-handled Congress knife. It was marked William Gilchrist's celebrated razor steel and may have been Sheffield-made. This knife is now in the Library of Congress. While Lincoln's Congress knife is an authentic piece of history, the next knife story is a little wobbly. A while ago I found this postcard on eBay. According to the seller, it is from around 1910. It's postally unused, and on the front you can see a knife and some text. Abraham Lincoln's knife, given by Mr. Lincoln to his friend Stephen Sumner Phelps, referred to in the familiar anecdote. Knife now owned by Will Phelps, a grandson. I'm not 100% sure about this knife pattern because one blade is broken and I don't know how large this knife is. It could be an equal-end penknife, like the small senator knife pattern, but it could also be a larger, maybe 4-inch equal-end whittler knife pattern. Stephen Sumner Phelps was an Indian trader and one of the pioneers of Illinois, and he was a close friend of Abe Lincoln. In order to understand the humor behind the next story, you need to know that Lincoln was an ugly-looking man. Of course, this is more a matter of opinion than of fact, but in the 1800s many people certainly considered him ugly. And Lincoln himself always joked about his looks. The funny thing is that Mr. Phelps resembled Abe Lincoln a lot, as you can see on these photos. But now for the anecdote that is mentioned on the postcard. It is reported in a chronicle from 1911. Abraham Lincoln was known for his quick wit, as evidenced by an occurrence when he was a guest of Stephen Sumner Phelps. Mr. Phelps resembled Lincoln very much. After dinner, as they were talking at the home of Mr. Phelps, Lincoln took from his pocket a very dilapidated-looking pocket knife. Mr. Phelps said to him, "Abe, it seems to me that is rather a poor pocket knife that you have." Lincoln replied, "Sumner, it is. That knife was given to me on the condition that if I ever met an uglier man than myself, I was to give him the knife. Fulfilling that condition, I now present the same to you." The next day, Mr. Phelps was whittling with Abe's former knife, surrounded by some acquaintances that were enjoying the joke. "Well, boys, see what you missed by being so handsome," was his only comment. Today the knife is part of a privately held collection of Lincoln memorabilia in Monmouth, Illinois. When George Morris, the current owner of the knife, contacted the State Historical Society about the knife years ago, they were skeptical about the authenticity. So I'm afraid there will be no way to prove the knife truly belonged to Lincoln. The next anecdote, you could say, is a variation of the ugliness theme. In fact, the anecdote is very similar to the last one, but this time the knife in question is a Barlow knife. In a popular collection of stories of Lincoln, compiled by Henry L. Williams, I found this entertaining story. The Prize for Homeliness. In keeping with his proneness to jest at his own expense rather than lose a laugh, Lincoln is credited with telling the following story upon himself. "In the days when I used to be on the circuit, I was accosted on the road by a stranger. He said, 'Excuse me, sir, but I have an article in my possession which belongs to you.' 'How is that?' I asked, considerably astonished. The stranger took a Barlow from his pocket. 'This knife,' said he, 'was placed in my hands some years ago with the injunction of the community through its bearer that I was to keep it until I struck a man homelier than I. I have carried it from that time till this. Allow me to say, sir, that you are fairly entitled to the testimonial.'"